Genetically Modified Organisms by Dante Saracola,
Colton Billingham,
Wyatt Shamoff,
and Ethan Hahn.
So, what is a GMO? Let's start with the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, an organization that plays a crucial role in protecting public health. A term we often come across in this context is GMO, which stands for Genetically Modified Organisms. This is a common term used by consumers and the media to describe foods created through a process called genetic engineering. This process involves identifying a gene responsible for a desirable trait in an organism, copying that gene, inserting it into the DNA of another organism, and ultimately growing a new organism. Moving on, we can see that the use of GMOs has a significant advantage. It allows us to create a more reliable and easily obtainable food supply. By genetically modifying organisms, we can increase crop yield and even enhance the nutritional content of food, contributing to a more reliable food supply. Additionally, GMOs can be engineered to resist pests and harsh conditions, making food more obtainable, especially in areas where traditional farming is challenging. However, it's important to note that this comes at a cost. There are essential environmental and health issues associated with the use of GMOs that we must consider. GMOs can potentially disrupt natural ecosystems and biodiversity. When genetically modified organisms are introduced into an ecosystem, they may outcompete native species or crossbreed with wild relatives, leading to unintended consequences. Furthermore, there are concerns about the potential health effects of consuming GMOs. While some studies suggest they are safe, more research is needed to fully understand the long-term impacts on human health.
Okay, so how can we fix this? So, solution number one, which is increasing the education about GMOs. The way of executing this plan would be to implement labeling on all genetically modified products, stating the benefits and risks of GMOs in order to properly educate people in a simple and easy manner. Stephen Lamb, holder of a bachelor's degree in political economy from Princeton and co-founder of Z-Biotics, in a news article states that mandatory labeling is good for consumers because it will help them be fully informed and less confused when they consider buying GMO products. Additionally, he goes on to say that it is better for the world in that it can benefit from increased understanding and use of genetic engineering technology that is already being developed to help us tackle problems like starvation, disease, and climate change. By eliminating the confusion people have about GMOs, individuals can make clear and educated decisions about what they are purchasing and what it is made out of. A study performed by Jane Kolodinsky, PhD in Consumer Economics, and Jason Lusk, a PhD in Agricultural Economics, resulted in a decrease in skepticism of GMOs after labeling was introduced. Through the labeling of genetically modified foods, individuals can begin to trust them more and make educated decisions about them. Through this solution, all audiences can be benefited by learning more about genetically modified products and how they should go about them in their daily lives. So, the pros and the cons of this solution. One benefit includes the elimination of skepticism between people and GM products. By reading the labels and learning more about GMOs, individuals can gain a better understanding of how they work instead of making decisions about them blindly. Additionally, the labels prove helpful to those who are not educated on the topic, as they directly explain the functions of GMOs and their distinct qualities so as to help people learn about them. Labels also provide a fast and easier way of informing people of GMOs because of their ability to be produced efficiently, as well as take less time to read than actually taking a class or attending school. Some cons include people's misunderstanding of the labels, as well as individuals completely ignoring the labels. To fix these problems, wording the labeling as simplistic as possible, as well as making the labels stand out, allow for more easier understanding of GMOs, and additionally allow for the decreased risk of them being ignored.
Another solution is to increase regulation surrounding GMOs. According to Daniel M. Wiesenapfel, a graduate from the University of Findlay, Ohio, studying animal science, regulation of GMOs should be tightened because due to the gaps in regulatory process, environmental problems have arisen as a result of GMO integration into the new agricultural market. Therefore, using regulation would allow us to minimize the impact that GMOs are having on our environment. Rebecca Bratfies from the Vermont School of Public Health writes, "The time is ripe to improve the regulation of agricultural biotechnology." Gillespie's claim supports Wiesen Apfel's, both arguing that regulation is needed to minimize the impact of GMOs on the local and world environments. The pros and cons of this solution. However, the use of harsh regulations on GMOs would greatly impact the profits of many farmers who depend on the innovations of GMOs. The regulation or removal of GMOs, according to Brian Walheimer with Purdue University, eliminating all GMOs in the United States would cause an 11.2% decrease in corn yields, 5.2% decrease in soy yields, and 16.8% decrease in cotton yields. Shown here, the farming industry would take a major toll if we were to cause harsh regulations around GMOs. On the other hand, according to the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, or the FDA, writes, the use of regulation on GMOs would allow for crops to minimize the impact on the environment or other crops. Regulations on GMOs would be a way in which we could minimize the impact which farming, and specifically GMOs, have on our world and environment.
But what is the best solution? Well, we believe that the best solution is government regulations. Why? First, we have to look at the problem with unregulated GMOs. Though, whether intentional or not, GMOs can do more harm than good. They can spread their genes to plants that weren't intended to have them, such as spreading pesticide immunity to weeds. They could even have adverse health effects if there aren't enough checks and tests on them before they are introduced to markets. And most importantly, they can be used by corporations to increase their power and greed rather than trying to solve for food insecurity. But why not food labels? Well, though food labels is good for increasing consumer knowledge and informed consumption of GMOs, it doesn't address the root problem of a lack of regulations. What this means is that regulations can actually benefit the farmers rather than getting rid of the crops that they depend on. Regulations can benefit farmers by making sure that the product has no faults and stopping things like Terminator seeds identified by the University of British Columbia from preventing them from having independence and creating dependencies on corporations. And just because we have regulations doesn't mean that we're getting rid of labels. Regulations can in fact mandate labels. By making sure that we label GMOs properly, we can discourage companies from introducing harmful GMOs into their products. Now that we've seen a general why, let's look at how we can implement government regulations. Government standards on GMOs. Straight Christian, a bio major at Rutgers University, provides the key empirical example of regulations of GMOs in the form of the Plant Protection Act, which gives the USDA and aphids regulatory oversight on plants that have been changed or produced by genetic variations. However, simply the Plant Protection Act is not enough. By expanding on it, we can have an even more potent solution. Antonson T. from the Center of Biosafety identifies the importance of review. He stresses assessment needs to be carried out by professionals with ethical expertise and practical knowledge, along with input from investors. Essentially, what Christian and Antonson are both saying is that we must increase the area of oversight of the government from not just simply the review board to all implementations of GMOs, such as their physical introduction to the environment, their imports and exports, as well as the testing and development process of GMOs themselves. By mandating all these things, we can make sure that government regulations create an incentive to use GMOs as an effective solution to solve food shortages around the world. And while yes, the process may take a long time and it could decrease the efficiency of GMOs, we believe that the benefits of safe and stable GMOs is what matters the most. Our bibliography. Thank you.
I started a little late. Did any of you guys comment? I have 6 minutes.
9:40-ish.